Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 120 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we have Kim joining us. Myself, Moyen, and Kim are here in Cardiff getting ready for the CCQ at Firestorm Games. Kim is one of the casters. I'll be doing production, and Moyen is going to be one of the players for this event. First off, I wanted to say, I guess apologies for the podcast coming out a little bit late this week, but we wanted to wait until Saturday because there was something that happened last week, which was influencer set champs. So I'll pass it over to you guys. How did you enjoy the event last week?
I had a great time. I think it was the best I've performed in one of the creator set champs, and that I think it was a really good day. And we got to build a jigsaw, and I think we all performed pretty well.
Moyen?
No, I had a great time. It was the first time I kind of was able to push myself to play something like a little bit off the beaten record, to play something off meta, and it made it a lot harder to win, but it made it all the more rewarding that I did still somewhat perform. So I had a good time. Also, this week podcast is a bit late, but last week it was a little bit early, so that made up for that. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, no, really excited for CCQ for Bologna next week as well. So lots to talk about. Mainly in this episode, we're going to be breaking down the deck list that we brought to the set championship event. Of course, we'll discuss the meta that we expect for Cardiff, and then it will probably be the same discussion for Bologna. I don't know how many things are going to change, but very much assume that whatever CCQs are taking place this weekend will also heavily influence what a lot of people will probably play moving into Bologna. So let's just jump straight into the deck lists. So, Moyen, you brought a spicy deck. You brought Ruby Steel. Tell us about this build.
Well, it is centered around the Tinkerbell, as you can see, but there's still a lot of different ways you can go about it. There was like in the past we've seen some Ruby Sapphire lists that were kind of just curving it into high, like into early 5 strength, high like high stats characters, just exerting them, saying that they don't care. There's also like the 3-cost 5-2P that you can immediately curve into, but then you have like this exerted 3-cost 5-2 in a deck and in a meta where you really want to sing strength. So there was a lot I didn't love about that, but the curve that was at least somewhat appealing to me was what if I can just curve Tinkerbell into a 3-cost into Bianca, exert Bianca, then I can also still sing strength, and it doesn't really matter that my 5/5 is exerted too much because it's very, very difficult to trade well into that. So the deck that I ended up playing is kind of like a deck that curves out and plays a lot of stats each turn, and then also has some ways to leverage the Tinkerbell for some aggressive lore gain, but also some shift options to be able to beat aggro, like the shift Tink or the shift Mulan. And once you do stabilize, which right now against aggro, even if you do stabilize, they're often already on so much lore. If they top deck a few high questing characters, they can still get over the line. So that's also where the Pirate's Life is coming in, being like there's a lot of characters in this deck that can sing it very well, including that Bianca. And as card draw just has the dog, which is just one of the most efficient card draws in the game, but also the Scar, which I guess that's kind of where initially how Tinkerbell got pushed this set, which is you can get the Scar in play exerted the turn you play it, which sometimes you can get around your Scar just being removed immediately. And yes, sometimes, okay, maybe against like Blurple, they'll want to Elsa the Tinkerbell, but you have lines where either you put a Pluto in front of it to protect the Tinkerbell, or you just say, okay, if they Elsa, that's fine, and try to develop an Orville on 3. And then if they trade into your Tinkerbell, you still have that 4/3 evasive on your turn if you curve like, for example, Tink, Orville, Bianca, to trade back into the Elsa. So basically, the deck just has two good options basically on each ink point in the game. It's like we have Hook, Mulan on 1, Lumiere, Tink on 2. Both Lumiere and Tink are allies for the ally synergy with Scar and Bianca. Then just some very well studded 3 drops with the Genie Orville. Generally preferring to play the Bianca on 4, and then a bunch of beefy bodies to round out the late game.
Cool. Yeah. Do you mind talking to me a little bit about this Hercules in the deck? Because I know this is a card that was talked about as like one of the best cards in Sealed, right? Because it's just a massive body. It's super difficult to get through. Is that kind of what you wanted to play it as just like a big sticky body?
Yeah, it's both the sticky body, but it kind of does everything. Just it costs quite a bit, and if it's like single target removed with let's say Hades or Into the Unknown, you are quite sad. But I think the main matchup where it does a good job almost all the time is against Amethyst Steel, where they do need to go through it manually with damage, and it comes in early enough where sometimes against like Amber Steel that's usually too late. And yes, of course I did ink it a lot, but over the tournament it had like at least 2 moments where it was very, very good, and then another few moments where it was still doing all right, or doing enough for being included in this deck. Yeah.
Another question I'm curious about. I know so this is the deck that you actually played at the Set Champs event within London, but the original deck you wanted to play, right? It had like an extra Mulan and I think 1 less Pirate's Life.
Yeah, the initial, like the version that I want to play was 2 Mulan, 3 Pirate's Life. But I ended up, I guess, not building it that way. So in the end, I had 1 Mulan. So I do think you could even play 3 Elite Archers, but also a lot of the value is in the threat of the shift. It's not that you actually get to shift and clear whole boards too many times, even though it did happen in those set champs. But I think like generally I would want to be between 2 and 3 Elite Archers in this.
Cool. And then the final thing I'd love to hear about was like what were your matchups for most of the day, and maybe since Ruby Steel is a deck that's not really popular within the meta, I know there are a few players who really enjoy the color combination, but maybe just talking about some of the decks that you felt like this does pretty well against, and some of the decks that maybe you feel like it struggles more against.
Okay, I think I'm not quite sure if the matchups are like that lopsided. To me, they're more like most seemed slightly unfavored.
Sure.
But none of them you were like truly out of it. There was, let me just think back on the matchups. Round 1 I played against Amber Steel. I won 2-1 on the play.
It was against Pascal, right?
Yeah, it was like
Pascal was not happy he lost against this deck.
It was like game 3. I needed to strength for like 4 damage, and I only had a 3 drop on the board, so I went like 3 1-cost Mulans, which could have been just like 2 1-drops and a 2-cost to be able to sing that strength, but also I had been able to set up the shift Mulan in a way where like they can't get rid of the 3 1-cost Mulans. So that was a very flashy game 3. I lost against an Amethyst Steel, but it was extremely close. There was a game where I was like, so I lost 2-1, and there was a game where I'm winning next turn, and they have 0 cards, but they did draw into like Doc White Rose. Then I somehow was able to beat Blurple 2-0 on the draw, which I expected that to be a little bit of one of the tougher matchups, but was just able to gain a lot of tempo of like repeatedly singing strength, and then just riding the tempo of that. I beat Emerald Steel, which is a very, very cool deck, which actually ended up taking the entire thing. We'll talk about this later.
Yep.
I think it's a very cool list that like kind of tackles it's very different to this, because this list is just kind of like has an all right game plan and does okay against everything. The Emerald Steel one to me more looked like, okay, it's actually trying to tackle specific matchups and will struggle in others. And a matchup that it would really struggle against is this Ruby Steel, as my characters were just too big for him. So there was like game 1, we were joking about like the Doc Sparity, which is a term LD likes to use. And he drew like 3 docs, used 3 docs, 3 strength, and I used 0. And he was on the play, and I still won that game. So it almost seemed like, although both of these games aren't part of the meta, my deck was like kind of built exactly for beating his deck.
Right? It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think there's one matchup I'm forgetting at the moment from the first 5 rounds. But in top 8, I then lost a close round on the draw 2-1 to green-blue, which I definitely had some winning chances there if some things went differently. So I was over the moon with the performance of this deck for sure.
Yeah, no, I think you proved that, like, I don't know, like, the play line of trying to get the Bianca out was pretty good. Like, just playing a 5-5 body exerted and gaining 2 lower think, like you said, is for 4 compared to for 3 playing a 5-2, that's a lot easier to get removed and stuff, especially with like fire the cannons and stuff in the meta. I think that's a big difference. But yeah, just 2 final questions, if that's okay, about the deck list. The first one is actually around the docks. In this list, I can see that you play 3. Would you consider maybe upping that to 4? Because I know in a lot of other steel decks in general, there is 4 because you want to just try and see dock as much as possible. Was there a reason that you didn't have enough docks, or were you just trying to consider uninkable count, or curious?
Well, okay, uninkable count. It's not like the biggest issue, as we see. We have like 7 uninks in this. Still, drawing multiple docks can really screw up this deck, especially when you sometimes just want to curve towards dropping that Scar on 5. Or it doesn't even have to be Scar on 5, but you kind of just like want to go spend 4 ink on one card on 4, 5 ink on a card on 5, 6 ink on 6 maybe, and then drawing A docks usually fine, but drawing multiple docks can be really hard. I still think you could easily run 4 docks in this, and it would be completely fine with just because of how powerful that card is at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, the final thing is I don't know, like you said, I it's a cool deck. I'm really happy to see you perform so well with it, but I feel like I don't know, if this deck started to see play a little bit more, I think there's one thing that this deck would particularly kind of struggle against that Amber decks could include to help make this matchup better, and that's playing a couple copies of World's Greatest Criminal Mind, because there are a lot of cards in this deck.
Sure, but like I don't think they can play it because like there's too many matchups where there's 0 targets. There's like Amber Steel, Amethyst Steel, Blurple, and in all of those games you're like, oh, I don't want to draw World's Greatest Criminal Mind.
I mean, against green-blue there are targets, but you don't really want to be waiting. You want to be winning the game before you're trying to remove those cards,
against
right?
green-blue, it's a great card, but when 3 of the other most popular matchups, it doesn't do anything. I think can't really play
Sure,
it.
that makes sense. Cool.
Just one cool interaction from this deck, which is mostly a very useless interaction, but I thought it was very cool. And then it actually came up in one of my games, and I didn't do it because I felt like it was the worst play. In that particular game, it would have actually been better to go for it. So the interaction I'm talking about is if you have the Tinkerbell on the board and some way to buff its strength, either Lumia or Scar, and then you shift the big Tinkerbell, that you can still use the effect of the Tinkerbell that you shifted upon to exert it to gain 2 lore. And that is a very cool interaction. Generally, it doesn't matter because if you're exerting it to gain 2 lore and the small Tink was already dry, then you could have also just quested or just challenged. But like questing generally amounts to the same thing. But there was just one game where I was so happy about this like unimportant interaction. And then was a game where I have like 2 cards in hand. They're exactly small Tink, big Tink. So like I could actually, and I have 6 ink, I could just go play the small Tink, play the big Tink, exert it.
I mean, that is a difference, right? Because in that particular case, the small Tink wasn't dry, so you couldn't shift and quest. So for 6 exactly, it's basically gain 2 lore instantly.
Yeah, and in that case, I still just played the Tink, didn't gain the 2 lore to keep this 2-cost Tink in hand because it seemed like a game that could go on a lot longer, where maybe this evasive 1/1 just nets me more than 2 lore. Which didn't end up being the case. So I was after the game, I didn't think it was necessarily the wrong play, but it was like I was sad not to have gone for such a cool play.
So, I mean, I'm sure people watching this might know other. Do you know of any other interactions that are like similar to that, where the card that's being shifted, like, is it like if you play certain card, like do X? Like, I'm sure maybe there are other interactions like that, but I'm curious if we can maybe try explain to the viewers how that works in terms of how the bag sees it. Like, is there a good way for you would be able to explain it, you think?
Like, yes, now out of nowhere, I don't really have like another example, but I'm sure those exist.
Yeah,
it's kind of just like the card that you're shifting on kind of still sees that card that you're shifting on that getting played.
Okay, sure.
It still sees that on play. So that's kind of how it's explained. It's kind of a weird interaction,
For sure.
and not the most important one to know, but it's just something I found very funny.
Cool. All right, we'll move on to the next deck list, and that is Amber Steel. This was your deck, Kim, and I believe you are heavily inspired by Sky Lorcana, who we had on the podcast last week and won the Denver CCQ with a list very, very similar to this. So yeah, I'll kind of ask you similar thing. How are your matchups and stuff? But the first thing is, were there any changes you made to Sky's particular list in terms of with this list? And what did you feel you wanted to make those changes?
Well, there is a slight error, and it is meant to be 4 1-drop rhinos and 2.
2 of the 4.
Yeah, I clicked the wrong button when I was making the
So
picture.
4 1-drops and
yeah, there's
2
4
4-drops.
1-drops
Okay.
and 2 4-drops. Basically, Sky's version. And I talked to him a bit about like Amber Seal in general, because coming into this post-rotation meta, and obviously I played a lot of Ruby Sapphire set like the first season, and I felt most comfortable, and coming into this post-rotation world, and I just didn't know what to play, and I played a lot of different decks just to see personally how I felt, but I felt like Amber Steel, for me personally playing it, I felt like it had the most like consistency into different kind of matchups. Just for me playing it, I felt like I kind of could learn the mulligans a lot easier than depending on like I could have one set mulligan, and then if once I knew what I was like up against, I could try to like alter my hand and like figure out what cards were better. But basically I chose to play more Svens than Rhinos because I did expect a lot more. I kind of expected a lot more mirrors. I did face a lot of mirrors. Obviously expected a lot of Blurple, but I only faced 1. But surprisingly, I did face a lot of mirrors in the room. I think there was only maybe 3 or 4 of them. But I felt like with the Rhino, sometimes I'm like, I kind of wish I had the Rhino, because if you're able to turn 2, shift the Rhino and have that to resist, the resist on the board is quite powerful, because they're like, oh, I don't know. But personally, when facing the mirror, I felt like not playing my Daisy Duck. If I had my Dock and a Daisy Duck in hand, I'd kind of want to play my Dock, discard the Daisy Duck, because I don't want to play the Daisy Duck, because it gives my opponent a lot more cards if you're not hitting the strength or the fire, the cannons. But I felt like it played well into most of the matchups and stuff like that. And the only thing I really struggled against was Emerald Sapphire, but I felt like I kind of knew how to play into it, because I played a lot in testing against you, and when we were like testing other decks. But if I were able to build a board wide enough and kind of go aggro and quest out as fast as I can before they could under the sea, I felt like it was really good. But more I knew how to play those lines and set up the board, it
Yeah,
was good.
and I think the Pete really helps out in not so much in the early stages, but trying to play it on the optimal turn where the under the sea could come out. Whereas I think it's a lot more difficult. It was always difficult to try and save Pete for like the perfect moment, but I think because Pete had so many more perfect moments in the previous meta, you just had more opportunities to play him, and it always felt okay. Whereas now you really want to try line that Pete up to say, okay, when I play this Pete the next turn, like I threaten the game and I'm gonna win. So yeah, and the other important thing when you're playing this deck versus Emerald Sapphire is to really try to utilize like your fire, the cannons, and your strength to stop their shift targets. So mainly their shift Clarabelles, because they can also be used to sing under the sea. Like, I think it's interesting what you said about the Daisy as well. I think in the mirror, it's quite interesting, and maybe within this particular build, you'd rather start with the Aurora trying to cheat out a few more characters than the Daisy. The Daisy can be maybe a better finisher. But yeah, super interesting. And you played against, I believe it was Harlan for one of the mirror matches, and then Martin for the other one. And you did you 2-0 both of them, or
I think I 2-1. I went 2-1 against both of them. Because I know both times I won the dice roll.
okay?
So I felt like that kind of helped a lot.
Yeah.
But Harlan had a very similar build to me, but I think he had more of the 4-drop Rhino rather than the Sven. Being able to top, I think most of the time we were top decking a lot. I think unfortunately for Harlan, he just didn't draw his ducks when he needed them, and I did, which kind of saved me. I was able to. I remember in one of the games in particular, I was able to top deck a Sven, play the Sven, ready a character, and then I was kind of threatening the 4 lore, and I'm pretty sure I was on like 16, and there was the 4 lore I needed to win. Martin realized like second game in that he had 4 Daisy Ducks on the board. Great for lore, but questing with your 4 Daisy Ducks gave me 4 extra cards, and he had, which obviously if he didn't hit an action, gave me 4 extra cards, and then he didn't hit the cards he needed, and then I happened to have the rhinos on the board at the time that I was able to get rid of his Daisy Ducks, so that helped me a lot.
He had 4 daisies, and you
He
were able
had-
to be able to clear that board is still
Yeah.
very impressive.
He
no?
had 4 daisies on the board at one time. I don't think the 4 stayed there very long. There was definitely 2 or 3 at a time because I could only obviously challenge with 1 rhino at a time. But between strength and if you're able to build a board wide enough, because there's obviously a lot of 1 drops. If I had a singer on the board, obviously my troubadour, he stayed there, he sang the song, and then if I could get as many 1 drops out as possible, because obviously you can get them out early on, and you have your troubadour turn 2, and then sing the strength to get rid of the daisy, because that's obviously the high willpower kind of makes it more difficult for you to get rid of. But I felt like I played really well into it. The only thing I felt like I struggled in was my top 8 was I was playing against Amethyst Steel, and normally I'm like really good, but I just unfortunately didn't draw my Fire the Cannons, and I didn't draw my docks when I needed to, so it's just unfortunate. But I felt like if it was another day and it was other cards, it definitely would have it could have gone differently, but it was still a good day, and I felt like it was kind of nice for me getting to play this deck, something that I'm not really used to, but like in a room where people are just like, oh, like maybe what they're not known for playing, because I know I wouldn't be really known for playing Amber Steel, but I also wouldn't have a lot of experience in like a competitive room like that, which it got quite intense and at points, but it was super fun, and I felt like bringing this deck for me personally was a nice choice, considering there was a lot of Blurple and in the room.
Yeah. Curious, Moyen, to hear your opinion on like how you feel the position Amber Steel is in now. Like, I mean, we'll also get into some of like we'll talk a little bit about some winning lists from the previous weekend, and of course, that's not going to determine everything, but you know, kind of 1 week this deck's on top, and then the next week this deck's on top. Like, where do you think Amber Steel's settling? Do you think people are saying, yeah, this is a powerful deck, so we need to learn how to counter it, right?
Yes, but it's like there's only so many tools you have to counter it. That there's I guess the best example of a deck that can really tech for it is green blue, where the Baymax improves that matchup significantly, but it also kind of makes every other matchup a little bit worse.
Yeah.
So I guess with Amber Steel performing so well recently, there's been like an upshift in Baymax, but also in John Silver's in green blue, which limits the power of Amber Steel slightly, but I think it still performs very, very well. It's one of the main questions that people aren't really sure about or have differing opinions on is like, what's the Amber Steel matchup against Amethyst Steel? Some people feel like Amber Steel does completely fine against it, maybe even slightly favored, but a lot of people think Amethyst Steel would be like one of the best decks to keep it in check. And if Amethyst Steel can't really keep Amber Steel in check, then what
can?
Yeah, no, not just what can, but also how do you justify playing Amethyst Steel then? Because if it doesn't beat Amber Steel, doesn't really do too well against the other things either. So as an Amethyst Steel player, you really want to have that matchup be one of your good matchups to really justify that deck choice. But yeah, I think between these 4 decks, there's a lot of back and forth, but also even outside of these top 4 decks, I do still think there could be stuff that's not found yet.
Interesting. Yeah. We're going to move on to talking about green blue now, which was the list that I brought. I shared this deck on Twitter already, but I did a lot of testing with green blue. Obviously, we had Joseph on the podcast last week, and there's 2 different versions you can take with green blue. There's kind of the more Pleekly build where you want to play more 1-drops like Bobby, the spray cheese kid. And then that allows you to, it helps with your Baymax line a little bit, because if you got more 1-drops, it's more likely that you can kind of have that Baymax under the sea opener. I opted to try and include just 2 copies of the Baymax. I was expecting a lot of Amber Steel on the day at the event, and there was quite a lot. In my particular build, I have like the one of Hades, which ultimately it felt fine, but I think now for this particular build, I'd kind of just opt for another Mother Knows Best. I've tested for quite a lot, and I really enjoyed the Mother Knows Best over the Hades in general. I've got the one of Belle of the Ball, which is I don't know, maybe a little bit of a meme, but it won me like 2 games like on the spot pretty much. Like
yeah, winning 2
Yeah.
games is not a meme.
yeah,
Nope.
so like it really helped me in some of the openers where my opponent clearly had that was against a steel deck. They clearly had the strength where they could get rid of my Clarabelle 1-drop, the shift target, and I just did my 1 into turn 2 ramp into Bell and then shift Clarabelle. I even had one of the most disgusting openers I think I'll ever have in Lorcana, which was I was against Amethyst Steel. I played Clarabelle turn 1. They played Palace Guard. I played, I think, Tipo turn 2 to ramp. They played Raja. I played Bell on turn 3. They inked their strength to play Cobra, discard Cobra, and then I shift Clarabelle, sing, heads held high, pop their entire board.
Yep,
And
draw a billion cards
yeah,
as well.
That
yeah.
is dirty.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're, I don't know, like I've also heard a similar thing where Amethyst Steel isn't the easiest matchup for green blue. I've heard a few people say this, and I think maybe that opinion's there because they have a lot of 3 strength characters, which at times, if you only have the under the sea and you don't have the heads held high, can be a little bit tricky. But I actually think that interaction with heads held high, it doesn't always come up and it's not always the best to do, but it can help you out in some situations. I know, Moyen, we actually discussed this today, that a couple of versions of green blue are actually also running like improvised to kind of like dig deeper in your deck, but also be a sort of answer against these illusion characters. I've seen some versions run Heffalumps and Woozles if they're like super scared of the Amber Steel aggro matchups. That also just happens to be okay against the illusion cards as well. So I actually think there's a lot of variety and a lot of different ways that you can take this. Like in the 4-drop slot specifically, like I think this version or this build that we have usually wouldn't really run the 6-cost Baymax and would play a few more Scrooges, the 4-cost 5/5. That's just quest for 2. That's uninkable. But the biggest thing that I was really happy about with this deck was I was pretty sure I wanted to play 4 Johns, but just before the event I was on 3 and I was like looking at some things and I took some cards out to fit the 4th John in, and I think John Silver was like the MVP of the deck throughout the day. I played for my matchups. I think game 1 I played against Amethyst Steel. I 2-1 to them. Then game 2 I lost to Amber Steel. I was on the draw. It was super close. I had to play to my out to like top deck a Baymax Shift and then sing Under the Sea, which I got. But then they, funny enough, closed out the game by just like spamming Calhouns and Rhinos, and the strength of those characters was too much for me to be able to easily remove. And then after that, yeah, I think I played a Sapphire Amber deck, and then another Amethyst Steel, and then another Amber Steel, which I eventually beat. So I finished 4-1. I was pretty high in Swiss, and then I played against LD in top 8, where our game went to time, and I felt really bad because I think I definitely took a little bit too much time. But it was also weird because when you're in top 8 and it wasn't untimed, there's this rule where it's basically after the 5 turns resolve, it's whoever's on the highest lore wins. So it took a little bit of time. I think it was on like the turn 3 where I had to decide, did I want to quest or not? Because the next turn I could have under the seed and heads held high to clear his board. But then if I do that, I have to use my characters to sing and I couldn't clear the board. So, but overall, yeah, I was just really impressed with the Emerald Steel deck. It went like super wide against me. Like at one stage, he could have easily just, I think he might have as well. I might have shift Clarabelle, and he's like, yeah, I've got 6 characters. I'll just strength that. I'm like, what? How is your board so wide? But the biggest thing in that deck was Ursula. Ursula being able to, like, we play so many songs. We play Mother Knows Best. We play You're Welcome. And of course, we play Under the Sea. Heads Held High, yes, it's a song, but I guess it is still another target and it could be relevant. That card just absolutely destroyed me. There was so many moments in the game where I think I had like the Shift Baymax and an Under the Sea in hand. I'm like, I've got this board perfectly set up. Oh, play Ursula. Never mind. You can't get rid of my board anymore. So it was super powerful. But yeah, finishing in the top 8 was really happy. I'd probably run this deck back again. Like the change I would make is probably get rid of the Hades, put in another Mother Knows Best. Maybe keep the Bell if you guys want to get a little bit spicy. But yeah, I mean, before we move on to talking about Emerald Steel, like I know I asked you a lot, Moyen, as well. Like, what are your thoughts on the Pleakley build in particular? Because I also found that in this deck, there were often times where I could still go for the double ramp line. Granted, it wasn't always, but like just playing a T-Bow on 2 and then maybe doing Sail into double link into 3-drop Clarabelle, and I actually really liked some of those lines. But yeah, talk to me about Pleakley.
Yeah, it has, well, at the start it really hasn't been my favorite way to build it. I'm starting to get around to it a little bit, just because Amber Steel has risen, which seems, it doesn't seem like it has a direct connection to that, but it's like, because of that, you want to play more Baymax and John, and they just fit quite well with Pleakley, because one, the Pleakley gets you to that 6 ink turn pretty efficiently, instead of like going maybe Ramp, Scrooge, Donald. If you go Ramp into Pleakley, you're already on 6, or if you go Ramp, Sail, Pleakley, you're already on 7. The other one is, if you do want to play Baymax to improve the Amber Steel matchup, then Baymax synergizes with extra 1-drops, and Pleakley also synergizes with extra 1-drops. Nonetheless, I don't think you want, like, at least personally, I don't think you want to build around Pleakley as your main opening, but I do think it's like, there's value in having that alternative line, and then depending on how likely you think your opponent is to take out all of your shift bases for Clarabelle, you might just want to go Pleakley instead. But I think it's really situational. For example, let's say your opponent has 5 ink next turn and they're playing Blurple, and you only have a single 1-cost Clarabelle on the board. I think I'd probably rather play Pleakley on the shift base than maybe playing a 4-drop expecting to be able to shift next turn and then not having a good 5 ink play. That might be example. But also the 3-cost Clarabelle still might work very well that turn if that's your second shift base. So personally, I think like 2 to 3 Pleakley I like as a count if you play like 2 to 3 1-drops, 2-ish Baymax, that sort of thing. But yeah, it is like kind of the one of the main questions you have to ask yourself when building Emerald Sapphire is, do I want to play Baymax? Do I want to play Pleakley? How many 1-drops do I want to support it? How does that impact the rest of my curve? But yes, it's a very, very interesting question.
Last thing I want to talk about, sorry, just before we move on, is 3 Under the Sea versus 4 Under the Sea. I think the only time I played 4 was in the set 8 meta when like Amber Steel aggro was like giga rampant, and I just felt like, oh, I need to like hit my Lost in the Woods into like all my Under the Seas. But granted, when I played that version, I mean, obviously I was playing 4. I felt like I bricked more, which I probably did brick more, so that feels bad sometimes. So personally, I really like this like 3-3 split, but
yeah, also on the other side, you were playing Amber Emerald, weren't you, when you were playing 4 Under the Sea? So like you were playing aerials and and like you might be able to sing it quite efficiently and dig for it. But I think both 3 and 4 is reasonable. If there's a lot of Amber Steel, I think if you want to play like a few Baymax 4 Under the Sea, that's fair. I do think if you do play 4 Under the Sea, that's like slight more incentive to also play something like a Bobby to save some bricked hands.
Yeah. Cool. So that's pretty much it. The last deck we're going to talk about from the set champs is LD's Emerald Steel deck, which kind of took the room by storm. I don't know, like it was super cool to see. The deeper he got into the tournament, everyone was like cheering for the rogue deck to make it. But I remember turning to Moyen, and I believe LD was in the semifinals against Blurple on the draw. By the way, I think I'm pretty sure you can listen to the Arda cast to confirm this, but I think LD was on the draw for most of the day, maybe maybe the whole day.
Yeah, he lost a lot of die rolls and he got in on a low seed, so even in top cut he was.
In top cut, he was like going second against me, against the Blurple, against Green Blue in the finals. But I remember turning to Moyen and saying, "Oh yeah, he's LD's playing Blurple on the draw in the semifinals." And Moyen's like, "Yeah, no, he's not gonna make it. Like that's it." And then I tell him he's like 1-0. He goes, "What? He's winning?"
Yeah.
And then we went
Yeah.
over, and he just did, like, he was doing some crazy stuff. He was, like, using Mother Knows Best to bounce his own dock back to his hand to replay it to
Yeah.
draw more cards. I think he piloted the deck extremely well. Granted, I mean, the longer the day went on and stuff, there was, like, one or two things that, we talked about afterwards and maybe he could have done differently. But just everything in general, the freshness of the deck, also the similarities to, it still has this kind of core Clarabelle package, so recognizing, how strong that is. But yeah, Moyen, would love to hear your opinion on this, like, Max Goof package, because it messed me up a lot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so with the Clarabelle package, you profit a lot of the tempo that you can gain, and this deck has 4 strength for Mother Knows Best, which are like the best tempo tools
Oh,
in
actually,
the game.
I will say, sorry to interrupt. So people are probably looking at this deck right now. I believe this is a 58 card deck, because I remember looking at this previously. There are 2 cards missing. There are 2 Heffalumps and Woozles that are also supposed to be in this deck. I just realized, because it was like, there's definitely some other songs I remember. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this deck is, I mean, if you look at these 58 cards, you could think, oh, it's very, very light on the 3-cost songs, which it is.
Yep.
As you need the small Max Goof to return one of those songs, and then you have, after singing that song again, you have the song on your discard to also be able to shift Quest with the Max Goof, sing it again, or play it again. At which point you can get an insane amount of tempo, and it's very, very difficult to come back from. And if your way to remove that Max Goof would just be like, oh, I have to play a character and hope it survives again, they might just have like another song, and then next turn they can quest again, re-sing that. So the Max Goof package can work very, very, very well. And I think normally maybe you would struggle to play just like a mid-range for Mother Knows Best list, but it also works incredibly well with that Clarabelle package. The deck just kind of, it combines so many of the strongest cards, right? It has the Clarabelle package, but also has like Dock, Strength, Fire the Cannons.
Ursula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ursula, it hasn't been seen as like one of these giants in the format, because Emerald like outside of this deck, Emerald wasn't really in the meta, except in Emerald Sapphire. And Emerald Sapphire is like the deck that wants a 2-cost card the least that doesn't
It
ramp.
can't fit in Ursula, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, it's like at no point in time does it really fit in the curve well. So generally, Emerald Sapphire has been staying away from Ursula. But it also brought back kind of a forgotten card that was very hyped up at the start of the set, which is this Louis. At the start of the set was like, oh yeah, Louis will help us keep aggro in check, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone was playing Rafiki,
Hook.
Voilguard, Hook, and it was just like a 3-cost that was getting changed by all of the 1-drops in the format. But now that Amber Steel is playing a lot less Hook right now, they're very susceptible to the Louis. You could think, okay, now their best option is they can still sing Strength, and then your 3-drop didn't do all that much. But combined with the Ursula, I think Ursula on 2, Louis on 3 with any 1-drop on 1 is like very, very potent opening to keep aggro Amber Steel in check.
Definitely, yeah. There's so many cool things that this list did. Like, we saw in the finals, like the Go-Go having like insane reach to like really be able to close out the game. But also the thing with the Ursula I noticed a lot from watching the games was just also seeing the information, right? Of course, Ursula doesn't hit all the time, but there was one crucial moment I remember the finals where LD was considering shifting his Clarabelle, because it seemed like it was like a good opportunity to do it. The green-blue player had a lot of cards in their hand, but opted to play the Ursula, and it's like, oh, I see there's a bend. If I go for my Ursula, or if I go for my Clarabelle shift line, that's all going to get discarded pretty much. So there is also the value in seeing the opponent's hand, and I think he was correct in sequencing with that card a lot of the time. Also, big fan that the Fire the Cannons also made its way into the list. I think that's a really important card within the meta at the moment. And yeah, I mean, this deck's really cool. I was really glad to see it at the event. Super happy that it actually took down the whole event as well. And I think, if people have enjoyed Emerald Steel in the past, pick it up, give it a try. Seems like a lot of fun. Doesn't seem like the easiest deck to play at all. This might, like, at a glance, might look pretty intuitive of, like, kind of how you pilot it and stuff, but I think the sequencing, it seems like it can be pretty tricky, in my opinion. So, Yeah, any final thoughts before we move on?
I really like it. I think we were all just secretly rooting for it just because it was that like just like under the table deck that like no one expected anyone to bring. It was like Moyen's Ruby Steel.
It's like Ruby Steel as
It
well.
was
We
like
all wanted
Moyen's
Ruby Steel to win as
and
well.
that they both made it into top 8, but then LD won, and like he won in such an insane way that when the game went to 1-1 and he took the win, it was the go-go that like got him that win that time. And just being able to see Max Goof in action, like the amount of times LD was able to pull off the Max Goof trigger just to like play the action from his discard, it was insane. It was great games to watch, and so I really hope to see more people bring this now to Bologna and just like watch, just to have more variety in the game. Like people coming into Bologna might have been thinking, oh, like the meta's so like, oh, Emerald Sapphire, Amber Steel, Amethyst Steel, Blurple, but just like people are still testing, people are still cooking. That like I hope people bring more to the table.
100%. And there's this thing about these rogue decks where we talk about all the time, the three of us, where it's like you play against something that you're not familiar with, and you're like, okay, what do they do? I can try to assume some of the stuff they have in their deck, but you get better at playing against decks that you see a lot, that you know about, that you know the lines, and sometimes bringing the rogue deck where you've put in the work against all of the other meta decks, and you bring something that you feel has a decent shot. Sometimes those are the breakout decks that can do it. That's not always the case. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of trial and error. But yeah, I would also like to see this brought. And I was also surprised. Like one thing, the amount of times that LD played, he just played the 3-cost Max Goof as like I'm just playing this as basically a 3-cost 2/2 and not triggering it. Was interesting, but it's like how often he wanted to line up for the shift line as well, which was really, really interesting. But granted, in this deck's curve, you can see that this Max Goof can also kind of be seen as a 4-drop, something you want to play in 4 maybe. So yeah, overall, super happy to see the deck.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, no, just like one of my favorite moments was so AD and I had been chatting. We're like, we're both okay. So we're playing something off meta.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to tell the other one what it was. We both felt it was more fun to keep it that way. And then one game, I was just playing my game. I looked to the side. LD was playing next to me. Like on his board, there's Louis Max Goof. He looks to my board. There's like Orville Bianca Tink.
And you're both like, what's going on?
Oh, okay. I see what's happening.
Yeah, indeed. Cool, yeah, so before we move on to talking about some of the other decks, I do have some pictures. So the first one here is LD with his glorious, Maleficent, Fabled champion playmat. I'm very, very jealous, I have to say. But we did all get the Maleficent top 8 promo.
Top 8.
So
I was super proud of us.
Performance.
Still very, very happy with that.
It's like still a playable card, and it's absolutely stunning. The playmat, stunning. We're getting into set champ season soon, so I'm gonna win a playmat. It's so beautiful.
I think this would be the one where I would want to chase them at personally. I think the art is just so cool.
But we only have the champion mat though, right?
You wish this had like just the full art?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wish there was also the non-champion mat, or maybe if there's only a mat for the winner,
I would like it without champion.
It could just not say champion, right? Because it's kind of implied if that's the only way to get the mat.
Yeah,
I think I would love it a lot more.
It's kind of
I like it, and I like this one a lot more than previous ones because they've actually like themed the champion into the mat, whereas in a few other ones it's kind of like stuck out like a sore thumb in the corner, whereas this one's kind of like in the theme. But I agree, I think I'd still prefer it with no champion.
I think the cleaner looks better, and I think you've kind of seen that from the convention playmats as well, like the 2024 and 2025, where it's just kind of the characters and kind of the inks. It's like the more minimal sometimes the better, and like showcase the art. Why not showcase the art? That's the coolest thing about it, you know?
Yeah.
The next image we have is Kim holding up the puzzle. Moyen, do you want to talk to us about this puzzle we all made?
I don't know. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Some people started with the middle instead of the edges. That was very frustrating to see.
That's not right. But basically, so there was Jigsaw that they had at the corner, just like, you know, in between games, if you finished your game early, you could go play it. So I don't know where Kawa was. He was over in the corner somewhere. But me and Moyen sat down, and there was
Probably
a few.
playing.
No, I think you were like packing up gear or something by then, or probably playing. So me and Moyen sat down like towards the end of it because we were like, we're finishing this. People had made a good progress. I had gone back and forth to it all day. We managed, like, there was 32 of us in it, between probably a lot of us. We managed to finish it that day. It did take a while, but yeah. And Martin put the last piece in.
Yeah, don't put the last piece in.
Because we all learned a very valuable lesson off Moyen that day, apparently.
Don't put the last piece in. You're stupid, apparently.
No, it's something my grandma always used to say. It's like it's kind of implying, oh, you couldn't do the other ones, but now for the last piece you show up and put it in.
show up and put it in.
Yeah.
Sure.
But then I had to do the thing to lift it up because I was like, we need a picture. And then the people in the Disney HQ wanted to put it on a like piece of cardboard to frame it and bring it. So I was like, guys, I got you. But everyone else was too scared to do it. But no, the puzzle was so much fun because like we're playing the card game, but then it's nice to do like, it's the art but on a puzzle. That was cute.
Yeah, it's also we've already seen how well it was received at the Ravensburg event where everyone was like doing the small part of the huge puzzle.
Mhm.
And now with this one being like Lorcana themed as well, I think it's even better.
Definitely. The next image is just the top 8. It was myself, Kim, Moyen, LD, Rob, Charlton, I believe Boba is their
Yeah.
name?
Yeah, Boba
and
Fett.
NJDS Tibbolt, I believe. This guy's very, very kind, by the way. He's one of the French players. I played him in the last European Chat Champs, and everybody there was just great to be around, great to hang out with, and I don't know, these events were always really special. Like, I think this one and the last European one are some of my favorite ones because it's just a lot more people. We get to interact with everybody. It's just a good time, and it was a nice way to celebrate Fabled as well. The final picture is everybody that was there. You can see Baker and Martin lying on the floor. We had players from like Poland, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, France,
Spain.
Ireland,
Spain,
UK, Spain. Did we have anybody from the Nordics? I don't know if we had anybody from the Nordics in the end.
I don't know if we did. I think
No,
we were meant to.
I don't
but they
think
couldn't.
so. But we'd like
But
this was
it was
way more than the
wild.
last one as well. I believe the last one was kind of like the main kind of countries within Europe, or rather the bigger countries within Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Do we say Italy?
Yes,
Yes,
it did say
and
Italy.
Italy,
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
And I did it for the girls. We talked like all day, being like, "Come on, girls! Like, 8 of us have to make it into top 8, and we'll kick all the boys out." And so I got into top 8, and I went to them. I was like, "Girls, what happened?" And they were like, "We let you down." I was like, "Yeah," but I did it. I did it for us.
What they actually, Kim was saying to one of the Ravensburger staff, they wanted to have a Kim versus Kawa finals. That would have been cool. And the
Yeah.
bracket actually matched up that if we both won all of our games, we would have met in the finals.
Yeah,
but we
and
both
then
let each other
I
down.
would have had to bet you because you're technically in Germany now, so we had to let UK and Ireland
Oh right,
win.
apparently I was representing
That's
Germany.
what Ben and Emma said. So you were technically representing Germany.
Yeah.
But that would have been fun. But no, I'm super happy for LD and
Oh
like,
yeah, he
just
really
for,
deserved it.
Just for like a rogue deck to come in and win, to just be like, you don't have to play Amber Steel and Emerald Sapphire and Blurple just to come in like everyone else.
Yeah, right. Also, I think it's easy maybe to assume if like Ruby Steel and Emerald Steel made top 8, that was like a weak field to
Oh no,
but-
they were all
No.
really good
It
players.
was
But
really
yes.
intense.
I mean, it wasn't that at all. It was somewhat of a mixed field, but still, like last few rounds, we were playing against like Continentals players quite a bit. For example, the finals, LD won against Rob, who's very very well accomplished on the draw. So, and it's not like Rob was playing off meta either. He was just playing like a very very
Good green blue deck.
Green.
like good what you'd expect in a green blue deck, like a normal green blue deck. And Kree's deck was also like very meta outside of the one bell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one spicy.
think-
card.
And that's still performed
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think as well, like Bar Kawa and Rob, you were both playing Emerald Sapphire. I know I was the only Amber Steel, but I think there was then every
Charlton
Bar-
played Lemon Lime as well, which was like the
except
dog's
Bar
deck.
Emerald Sapphire, every other deck in the top 8, which was really cool to see, was a different color combination.
Which was super cool.
It was
Yeah.
it was wild.
I
It
think
was a great day.
I think the last thing I just want to mention before we move on to talking about some of the winning decks from this past weekend is for people who've discovered the Emerald Steel deck. And again, I really do encourage going to listen to the Articast as well, where LD I'm sure will give a lot more thoughts since he was the one who built the deck. Moyen, do you want to quickly talk about what he mentioned to us at least, why he built the deck and kind of what matchups he felt the deck were good into? I mean, I don't know. I assume he did tell you, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think the matchup that was built for the most was just like against aggro.
Yes.
Like the Ursula opening, the Ursula Louis was incredibly strong against that, and then outside of that was still just like, I don't know. Sometimes the under the sea decks, they can get that under the sea off and then still kind of struggle to do stuff because all of the cards are so contextual and codependent on your opponent having cards in their hand. But I think this Emerald Steel deck, once you do stabilize, all your cards still like kind of push you towards being able to win that race as well, and then also locking out the game with those goofs. I think, well, at least when he spoke to me during the turn, was like, yeah, I can't beat Blurple. I'm good against everything else, but Blurple's impossible. And then suddenly,
and then he beat on the draw.
Yeah, suddenly
2-0. Yeah, crazy.
It was.
I believe it was 2-0.
No.
No?
I think it was 2-1.
Okay, maybe it was 2-1.
But okay, that doesn't matter too much. He beat Blurple
Yeah.
on the draw.
Yeah.
That was like the most impressive one. I think in general, when bringing this deck, you might be better off if you are able to dodge Blurple somehow.
Yeah. He mentioned to me that he felt pretty good into Emerald Sapphire as well, although it wasn't perfect. Like you said, if they get the under the sea off, they get off. All right, moving into some of the decks from this past weekend. We're not going to spend too much time on it because I think we really wanted to focus on the influencer set champs, but it is important to mention these decks because we're moving into, by the time this pod goes live, we'll probably be at Cardiff, so be sure to tune into the official Disney Lorcana Twitch channel. We might be live. So the first deck we're going to have a look at here is Blurple by Luca. This was the first place deck from the Summer Lore League 2025. And from my initial look at this deck, the only real things that stand out to me are an extra 1 jump. So this person very much wants to get their ramp. And the Monstro as well. So Monstro inclusion, pretty interesting. I also love to see 4 develops within this particular build. I mentioned Develop Your Brain within Blurple a lot last week, and I think it definitely has a place, but sometimes it is difficult to fit it in there as well. So, Moyen, please talk to me about the Monstro. It's actually so funny. We literally, before we started recording this podcast, we were talking to Kim and everything about
I was just saying how disappointed I was that more of Monstro's not being played, and they're basically like, Kim, why do you play Monstro? And I was like, because he's a beast. and then they actually explained it to me, and I was like, well, he's Monstro and he's from Pinocchio and he's beautiful, so you should just play him.
Why would you play Monstro?
Why would
Let
you
the
play
viewers know
Monstro?
why should you play, or why would you play rather Monstro if you're expecting a specific meta?
Because I love the character and he's beautiful.
That's a very Kim answer, right?
No, he's kind of making its return since Green Blue has been getting more popular. I think against Emerald Sapphire, outside of that, I think in most matchups he doesn't really do that much. Because against the Amber Steel, he's just too expensive to really do anything. And against all of the Amethyst decks, so Blurple and Amethyst Steel, he can be okay if you happen to run into a board state where there's an exerted, non-evasive character, and then you just like play it, take 1 challenge, leave the character on the board, it's fine. But it can often feel like luster when the board is a lot more about being able to control the evasive side of the board for a while.
But if you play this and Dumbo's Feather, you could make him evasive. And then it's going to be like set to Scar, where you challenge a character, banish a character, ready, except you can play Monstro, challenge a character, discard a card, and then it's nostalgic and you feel like you're playing a Scar.
I guess.
So I think if I would have played Blurple in content set champs, I might have played like a lot of Monstros and 1 or 2 feathers.
Maybe one. Yeah, I can see you playing a one-off feather. Yeah.
Because, well, it's not just that they can clear boards by discarding cards, but also if your Monstro ever sticks, you can like use it a lot for the Dumbo effect.
Yeah.
And if it has evasive
Ghost,
suddenly,
what did people call it? The semi-infinite combo.
yes.
or
So
whatever.
you I guess So if the Monstro sticks and you don't have, like, in the next turn, you still have to play Dumbo and the Feather, that's 6 ink. I guess for every ink point that you are after 6, you gain 1 lore. Plus, I guess, the initial 2 from questing. So you quest, and then for each ink over 6, you gain a lore and cycle a card from your hand. Which, I mean, that's not like that crazy, but imagine now Dumbo and Monstro stick. Okay, now then you're probably winning already. But then you can, like, every ink point after 2, you're gaining an extra lore. So it's just kind of a cool combo. Not necessarily something I would recommend for competitive. But okay, we were talking about Emerald Sapphire.
Yes.
Why is it so good against Emerald Sapphire? Well, Emerald Sapphire's characters, they don't have that much strength. And then you get to challenge a lot of their stuff pretty efficiently with the Monstro. It lines up very well against the Clarabelle, against all of the low strength characters, but also it doesn't get hit even by Headsail High Under the Sea because it is over that 5 strength threshold. And the biggest, or a very big thing, is that the cards you discard to be able to clear the board aren't really a downside a lot of the time against Emerald Sapphire, because Emerald Sapphire requires you to have cards in your hand to be able to draw off their Clarabelle. And you could say, okay, but if I don't have a lot of cards, my turns are also worse. But at the end of the day, the more you play with and against Emerald Sapphire, you realize that, especially a deck like Blurple, it can function much, much better if you're both on low cards in hand, because the cards in the Blurple deck, they are a lot less reliant on being combined with specific other cards in their deck, whereas the Emerald Sapphire cards aren't, like, as high impact standalone. And yeah, Monstro can kind of help you get into that game state where you equalize the board a little bit, but also get yourself low enough in cards in hand that you force yourself into, like, this low resource game, which you are generally favored to win against Emerald Sapphire. So if you want to beat Emerald Sapphire, I think Monstro is the number one way you can improve that matchup.
Cool. The only other thing I kind of want to mention in here is just finders keepers in general, because I kind of see it in some lists. I see it maybe not so much in other lists. Where do you find this card kind of lands in Blurple, and maybe more so, when do you find the best time to play it? Is it always kind of this card you want off the top in the late game to kind of just keep pulling you into the game, gaining some resources? Like, is it okay? I mean, maybe against certain matchups, it's okay to just play it on 5. I know previously that's been the case, but maybe not so much now. Like, I think keeping a board presence against some of these really fast-paced decks is really, really important. So I'm just curious where you find that card lands overall, and how you could maybe mess around with the ratios. Like, okay, maybe 1 or 2 is fine, so I can kind of make some room for some other stuff.
Yeah, you kind of want to play, like, enough to the point where you are rarely running out of cards in the mirror, in my opinion. And then also with the ratios, it kind of depends on how well is your deck set up to be able to sing second star. How many second stars do you want to play based on, like, uninkability issues, and how many finals keepers do you want to play? Generally, you try to play it as late as possible. Every turn where you have, like, something that meaningfully impacts the board, you'd kind of rather do that instead, unless you maybe need something very specific for the next turn. But maybe if you ever have, like, a turn where you're not being ink efficient, or the play that you could do this turn that's not Finders Keepers, it doesn't really impact the board as much, those might be the turns where I think you should try to fit in the Finders Keepers, which will then improve not just the next turn, but also maybe the turn in 2 turns.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense. The final list we're going to be talking about is a Emerald Sapphire deck, which it says this is by the same. Wait, this is not by the same player.
No.
Sorry, they're both called
No,
Luca.
they're
They are
both
different.
Luca.
They are different Lucas.
This one
They are
came
different
second,
Lucas. This
I'm
came
pretty
second.
sure.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is an example of Pleekly build, and honestly, it looks pretty clean. Like, I like the count of Pleekly. I actually really like the 3 Pleekly in here. I think the 3 Donald are nice. I think playing into the Baymax line a bit more makes sense. Also with the Pleekly, makes sense to have a higher count of Hades. I think Hades makes more sense within the Pleekly builds in general. I know that, like, my deck play. Okay, I want to talk to you about a card, because I think you've mentioned this card previously, and it's always so weird for when I play it, because it never feels like it's great, but it never feels totally awful. Maybe it goes below average. It's not the card in this deck in particular, but I'm talking about kind of the Pleakley into Hades line. It's the 5-cost Donald, 3/4 quest for 2 that when you play it, you ink the top card of your deck. So some people kind of see this card and it's like, okay, another way to ramp faster into your 7-drop, right? That it isn't specifically either like the double ramp line, Pleakley line, stuff like that. Where do you land on that card in general? Because I keep looking at my version of Green Blue and saying, oh, I feel like this is a card I could like cut and try to put something else in, but it's always kind of just fine if I play it. Usually I want to find my opening shift line, my better start than just playing that card. But do you think by playing that card you should also have more 7-drops specifically? So like my version, right, it's not really as high in the Hades, but why do you think a version with Pleakley would be higher in Hades than a version that maybe runs this Donald instead, if that makes sense?
Okay. Well, the Donald's okay. It makes a lot more sense in a list that has less alternative 3 costs that they want to play on 4 ink.
Yes.
And more like a deck that wants to play a lot of like Donalds and Scrooge on 4.
Yes.
So that it actually ends up on that exact 5 ink slot and then bridges you to like basic Clover. But I don't really think the count of Hades matters too much in this conversation.
Okay.
Because Hades in general is not something you want to like play as early as possible. It's more like the best card as the game goes on
later. Yeah.
Like if it has gone on for a long time, it's like a 2-for-1's basically everything. It's a very potent threat. It's a great card, but it's not a card you want to play early. So even like sail Pleakley into Hades, that's not amazing. It's like, okay, you've played now you have a 3/4 and a 3/6 and you inked one of my cards. And you ramped me. So,
and in the early game, ramping the opponent is like very impactful.
Yeah, that's the big thing where it's like giving your opponent an ink when they are out of cards or where they are at an ink threshold where it doesn't really enable them new plays. That's like a much lower downside than doing it on turn 4.
Yeah.
On the like that's okay. I think there's a lot of other arguments for why you'd want to play like Hades or Mother Knows Best. They have their ups and downsides, but I actually think it's kind of the opposite. I think in Pleakley builds, I would between Hades and Mother Knows Best, I think Pleakley builds profit more of like they benefit Mother Knows Best more, just because suddenly you have like more cards that you play on turn 3.
I can sing Mother Knows Best.
Right, and it's not like the 4-drops can sing Mother Knows Best, but still the 3-drops, they can sing You're Welcome. So like giving them a meaningful song to sing is still very relevant, and like with 4 Clarabelle, 3 Pleakley, I do think could very well have built this around Mother Knows Best as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I've seen so many green blue players talk about is that balance of am I going more Hades, am I going more Mother Knows Best? And for me, like I said, I'm seem to be leaning more towards Mother Knows Best. I know some people that are like super high on their card that like nearly always want to play 4.
Yeah,
and I'm like, like even LD's build, right? Like the power of Mother Knows Best is really, really good, but similar to what you were saying about like the 3 dot conversation, like for me, I really like 3 because I love the card, but I feel like it's really bad when I have multiple in my hand and I can't sing. Like it feels like a very bricky card in that situation. But overall, I'm a big fan of more Mother Knows Best rather than less or none in this case.
But I think another thing is between the Hades and the Mother Knows Best is in the games that are going well, Mother Knows Best is far, far better than Hades.
Yeah.
Because in the games that are going well, you have like singers on the board. You don't really care that you're bouncing one of the characters to their hand and they get to replay it because maybe you're drawing off the Clarabelle and you're just completely overwhelming the opponent in a way where they never come back, which Hades would never allow you to do because Hades costs 7 ink. And you'd much rather like I don't know, it doesn't have that same swing as singing a Mother Knows Best does. We're actually testing earlier and there was like a green matchup where we both had a Clarabelle on the board, but Sanya was able to select Mother Knows Best 2 of your Clarabelles.
It was the biggest swing ever. It was crazy.
Like, if you look at that game state, Hades could have never swung the game in that way. On the other side, I think Hades can be better in some games that get a little bit more scrappy, where you both get into a top deck mode or you weren't able to draw as many of Clarabelle, and now you're drawing like a Hades or Mother Knows Best. There can be a huge difference in that as well. But I don't think it's as easy as, oh, if Hades is better in the games that aren't going so well, of course I want to be playing Hades because I'm winning the games with Mother Knows Best, where Mother Knows Best is good anyways, because that is also not the case. I think like a high density of these like single target bounce removal spells, like You're Welcome and Mother Knows Best, is also very, very important for like the just having a consistent core game plan where you do get to sing a lot when you shift early. I think there's a lot of games, let's say on the play against Blurple, if you shift early, you know they have nothing to really deal with your Clarabelle. If you also can sing like Mother Knows Best or You're Welcome on their 4-drop. If you can't, that's such a different game. It's like it's light and day, where suddenly it's a game where they can very much get back into it. Whereas if you have that Mother Knows Best or You're Welcome, they really can't. So that's kind of to round things up on Hades Mother Knows Best. That's just all of the input that I would want to give to people. And then one thing regarding the Scrooge, because I think Scrooge is such an amazing character. And now I think we've seen a little bit less Scrooge recently and a little bit more Pleakley. And to me, it's not the main point is not that Pleakley is better than Scrooge. The main point is more like, oh, maybe Amber Steel is so rampant that I want to play a few Baymax. If I play a few Baymax, I'd rather play the build that doesn't also have this uninkable 4-drop.
Yes,
That's like, it's like sometimes you're like forced to use it for your curve, because if you don't, then the other curve would be better, but it doesn't work if you have the Scrooge in your hand.
Yeah, that's like my particular build. If I wasn't running the Bell, it would probably just be a Scrooge. And I kind of would like to run 2 Scrooge, but then I can't run really more than that because of the Baymax, because I opt to play the Baymax version. One last card I want to discuss before we move off the decks, because I know this card was in some of your early builds of Emerald Sapphire. It's Stopped Chaos in its tracks, right? How do you feel about that card within Green-Blue specifically, and how did that card perform in your early testing? Because it kind of makes sense in terms of it's bouncing stuff back, it synergizes with your Clarabelle. How did you find that card?
I still like it a lot. It's like I wouldn't go above 2 copies, but I think if you have a version where you can fit it in without impacting your core gameplay too much, I think it gives you like a very versatile answer to, or not answer, like a very versatile piece to that game plan. Because as it's both inkable but also can swing the board quite well. I think it makes the Amethyst Steel matchup a little bit better because they have all of these 3 strength characters that you suddenly now get to interact with. Also, I guess I've never played more than 2 Hades, or never been a big fan of more than 2 Hades in Emerald Sapphire. But it also has pretty decent synergy with Hades if you get like to those scrappy games where maybe you can just like use your Hades and something else to sing it. Bounce your Hades, replay the Hades, take out something else that you really needed to get rid of. So there's some synergy there that would improve the card even more, but I also don't think, like, if your deck can't afford to, I think playing 0 is fine too.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. All right, yeah, so that is it for this episode of the podcast. As you mentioned, we're all we're in a hotel right now in Cardiff recording this, but it's been a blast. I don't know if we've ever gotten this opportunity to do this where we can all see each other in person and kind of interact and stuff. So it's been a great time. Super excited to see everybody this weekend. Looking forward to Bologna next week. Big week for me and Kim making the official debut casting appearance. And hoping Moyen can score himself a golden Mickey as well. It'd be awesome, right?
It was last year's Bologna that Moyen got top
16.
Top 16. So we want to see Moyen take the win this time.
Right, I was 1 match away, and I'll try my best again this season. Also, I guess this is not just Lorcana, but I've had a great time because we flew through Dublin, so I was able to meet the families and the doggos, and yeah, I already miss the dogs.
Yeah, I miss the dogs a lot as well, but it's been great having you over and like.
We showed Moyen our homeland and. Where we play Lorcana, and hopefully we'll get to take them to our locals on Monday, and we'll on the way back if we have time.
So we'll have one more day in Dublin next week that I'm looking forward to. I also tried to race the dog. I didn't get the ball before the dog.
No.
It was not very close, but I tried.
Doggo was very fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you threw the ball, and the dog was already 10 meters ahead of me before it was even accelerated.
He's like a bullet. Woo.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the Kim's dog was very funny because it's a little bit anxious and at first wasn't sure of Moyen. But then as soon as Moyen started playing ball with him, he
goes,
loved Moyen.
Okay. He
But
goes,
then
okay, yes, try the ball.
slowly throughout the day, when we stopped playing ball, he started going, "Who the hell is this person?" and got like really anxious around Moyen. So
He was fine once he was sitting down, and then whenever Moyen got up, Coda would be like, "Where are you going? Who do you think you are? This is my house. I don't remember you." And then Cree would take him outside and be like, "Oh yeah, ball. Let's go play ball."
Yeah. So, but it was fun. It was a great time.
It was entertaining. It was nice to bring Moyen home and show him that side before we get back into our busy Lorcana schedule.
Yeah, set champs coming up, DLC Milwaukee, and then before you know it, honestly, it's going to be set 10, which is kind of crazy. I think set 10 is the second week in November is pre-release. No, I think actually the first weekend in November is pre-release, and the second weekend is full release. So I don't know. I've loved it. Like Fabled has been a blast. It's just been cool to like go to more events, compete more, see more people, be back in that space because since EU champs it hasn't really been the case, right? I mean, we've gone to events and we've seen the community, but it just hasn't felt the same. And these CCQs I think are super cool because they are like somewhat like at least semi-official events. A lot more people are traveling for them. The stakes are pretty high to play for, right? The finals in a CCQ is like, okay, I better, like literally play my best. No misplays to the best of my ability. Yeah. Were you doing something there, Moyen? No? Okay, cool. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the podcast. The number one thing you can do is leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There's a video version available over on youtube.com/AppleCanaPodcast. Hit the subscribe.
Yes, hit the subscribe, but also to the people that asked, where's Moyen last week? I almost forgot.
Because that was back to this building section. Because that was the number one question
Okay, so
asked.
we'll just do this quickly. So, I wanted to be there. I was like, okay, I'm only available on Wednesday. And then the pod just comes up and he didn't ask me. So I felt like I'm being kicked out. I don't know what you guys think about this. I didn't like it.
There is reasons.
Comment down below and we can discuss this in this building section
There
next week.
are reasons why Moyen is mad at me, but the reasons
Yes,
are...
I just explained them. They're very
but
obvious.
there are other reasons why you couldn't be on the pod at a certain time.
Wait, and I said I'm available Wednesday.
Okay. We won't talk about this right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will have this conversation off the podcast. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.